I stood frozen in the middle of the grand ballroom at the Hilton Plano, watching my own face projected on a massive screen above the stage. But it wasn't a photograph from my graduation or a family vacation. It was me covered in grease and motor oil crawling out from under a Toyota Camry at my garage. The caption beneath read, "Maya Carter, a cautionary tale of wasted potential." My mother stood on stage, fake tears streaming down her carefully made-up face, telling 300 of Plano's wealthiest residents how their generous donations could help save her eldest daughter from a life of manual labour and shame. That was the moment I realised my family had never seen me as their daughter. I was their charity case, their scapegoat, their meal ticket. And this Christmas Eve party wasn't a celebration. It was my public execution. But before I tell you what I did next, if you're enjoying this story of how I went from being my family's doormat to becoming their worst nightmare, please hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment below telling me if you've ever been underestimated by your own family. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. Let me take you back to where this all started, to December 22nd, just 2 days before that humiliating moment. I was lying on my back under a 2019 Honda Accord. My hands covered in transmission fluid, when my phone started buzzing against my hip. The garage was quiet except for the occasional clang of tools and the classic rock station playing softly from the speakers. This was my sanctuary, the place where I felt most like myself. I had built Carter Auto Care from nothing over the past 5 years, and it was finally turning a real profit. Not that my family would ever acknowledge that. I slid out from under the vehicle and grabbed my phone, already knowing who it would be. Mum never called, just to chat. The caller ID confirmed it Linda Carter. I wiped my hands on a rag before answering. "Hey, Mum!" Maya. Her voice was clipped annoyed, like I had already done something wrong just by existing. "I need you to come home immediately. We're having important guests for dinner tonight. The bank director and Pastor Williams will be joining us." "Mum, I'm in the middle of..." "I don't care what you're in the middle of," she cut me off. "This is family business, real business, not whatever it is you do in that grimy little shop." I felt the familiar sting but swallowed it down like I always did. "What time?" 6 o'clock sharp. "And Maya..." Her voice took on that particular tone that always made my stomach tighten. "Please don't show up looking like a mechanic. Try to make yourself presentable. We have a reputation to maintain." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my phone for a long moment, covered in the honest dirt of a day's work, and wondered not for the first time why I kept subjecting myself to this. But I already knew the answer. They were still my family. And some stubborn, hopeful part of me kept believing that one day they might actually see me. I finished up with the Honda washed up in the small bathroom at the back of the garage and headed home. The drive from my modest shop in East Plano to my parents' mansion in the exclusive Willow Bend area took 20 minutes. Every mile felt like crossing into a different world. My battered Ford F-150, the one I had bought, used and rebuilt myself, looked out of place among the Teslas and Mercedes in the circular driveway. The Carter family home was a monument to success and appearances. A sprawling Mediterranean-style villa with pristine white columns, manicured lawns that were maintained by a team of gardeners 3 times a week, and enough square footage to house a small village. My parents had bought it 15 years ago when Dad's furniture business was booming back when I was still in high school, and my siblings were the golden children everyone adored. I walked through the massive front door and immediately felt the familiar sensation of becoming smaller, less significant. The foyer alone was bigger than my entire apartment. Marble floors, a crystal chandelier that cost more than my truck, and family portraits lining the walls. In those pictures we looked like the perfect American family. Dad distinguished and successful. Mum elegant and devoted. Ryan, my older brother, the brilliant plastic surgeon with the perfect smile. Chloe, my younger sister, beautiful and social media famous. And then there was me, always slightly out of focus in the background, like the photographer couldn't quite get me to fit in the frame. Before I could make it past the foyer, my sister-in-law Jessica appeared, blocking my path. She was Ryan's wife, a former pageant queen who had traded her crown for a marriage to a doctor and a spot in Plano's social elite. She was holding a black and white uniform, the kind you'd see on servers at a fancy restaurant. "Perfect timing," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. "Your mother asked me to give you this. We're short-staffed tonight, and well, you're used to working with your hands anyway, right?" I stared at the uniform, then at her smug expression. "You want me to serve at my own family dinner?" "It's not really your dinner, Maya. You're not exactly the guest of honour." She thrust the clothes into my arms. "Besides, you should be grateful. At least this way you'll be useful." Something hot and sharp twisted in my chest, but I kept my face neutral. I had learned years ago that showing hurt only gave them more ammunition. I was about to turn and leave to walk right back out that door and never return when my father's voice echoed from the top of the grand staircase. "Maya, is that you?" Thomas Carter descended the stairs with the commanding presence of a man who was used to being obeyed. At 62, he still had the build of someone who worked out with a personal trainer 4 times a week. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his suit custom-tailored. "Good you're here. We need to talk." He didn't wait for my response, just turned and walked toward his study, clearly expecting me to follow. Jessica smirked and disappeared toward the kitchen with the uniform. I stood there for a moment, my hands clenched around my car keys, debating. Then I followed him, hating myself for it. His study was all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with first editions he had never read and awards for business achievements that were becoming increasingly dated. He sat behind his massive desk and gestured for me to take one of the chairs across from him, the ones positioned slightly lower so visitors would have to look up at him. "I'll get straight to the point," he said, pouring himself a scotch without offering me one. "Your mother and I have been discussing your situation." "My situation? This garage business of yours. It's been 5 years now and you're still working like a common labourer. It's embarrassing, Maya. Do you have any idea what people say when they find out Thomas Carter's daughter is a mechanic?" I bit back my first response and tried to keep my voice even. "The business is doing well, Dad. I'm actually making a profit now. I've built something I'm proud of." "Proud?" He laughed, but there was no humour in it. "You could have gone to Harvard. Do you remember that A full scholarship to Harvard and you threw it away to fix cars?" "I didn't throw it away. I made a choice. A stupid choice." He leaned forward, his eyes hard. "But that's in the past. What matters now is that you're going to stay for this dinner, and you're going to be pleasant and helpful. No arguments, no dramatics." "Or what?" The words came out before I could stop them. His smile was cold. "Or I'll call in that student loan debt." My blood went cold. "What are you talking about? I paid that off 2 years ago." "The primary loan, yes. But you seem to have forgotten about the private loan your mother and I co-signed for when you were struggling in your first year of business. $50,000, Maya. I can call it in at any time, and if you can't pay well, I suppose your little garage could be seized as collateral." I knew he was lying. I remembered every loan, every debt, and I'd paid them all. But the threat was clear enough. He had the money for lawyers, for accountants who could make paperwork say whatever he wanted it to say. And I had scraped together everything I had just to keep my business afloat during the pandemic. "So you'll stay," he said, taking my silence as agreement. "You'll be helpful. You'll make this family look good for once. Do we have an understanding?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Good. Now go help your mother, and Maya, try to smile. It won't kill you." I left his study feeling like I had swallowed broken glass. This was my family. These were the people who were supposed to love me, support me, believe in me. Instead, they saw me as a problem to be managed, an embarrassment to be hidden or controlled. The next day passed in a blur of preparations for the big Christmas party. Mum had me running errands, picking up last-minute decorations, confirming reservations. Every interaction was a small cut, a tiny reminder that I was there to serve, not to be celebrated. Chloe posted Instagram stories about the upcoming Carter family Christmas extravaganza, but somehow never managed to include me in any of the shots. Ryan stopped by briefly and made a joke about hoping I had washed the motor oil out from under my fingernails. Jessica asked if I could help the catering staff set up since I was practically service industry anyway. I endured it all with a fixed smile, telling myself it would be over soon, that I just had to get through this one night. But that evening, December 23rd, everything changed. I had gone to the house early to help with setup as ordered. The party was scheduled for the next night, Christmas Eve, but Mum wanted everything perfect, and that meant multiple days of preparation. I was in the kitchen helping arrange centerpieces when I heard voices coming from Dad's study. The door was slightly ajar, and I recognised my father's voice, then Ryan's laugh, then Mum's sharp tone. Something in their voices made me pause. There was an edge of excitement, of conspiracy. I knew I shouldn't eavesdrop, but my feet carried me closer to the study door before my brain could talk me out of it. So we're all agreed then? That was Dad sounding pleased with himself. Tomorrow night during the party. It's perfect, Ryan said. Everyone who matters will be there. The live stream alone will reach thousands. Mum's voice joined in. I still think we should have rehearsed my speech more. The timing has to be just right. I need to look devastated but hopeful. You'll be fine, Linda. You've been practicing that wounded mother act for years. Dad's laugh made my skin crawl. Chloe's voice bright and eager. And I'll handle the social media side. I've already drafted the posts. #SaveMaya, #FamilyFirst, #SecondChances. My followers are going to eat this up. Just remember, Dad said, his voice taking on a harder edge. The goal is to raise at least 200,000. The furniture business needs an injection of cash, and this is the perfect cover. Who's going to question a charity drive to help my own daughter? My hand went to my mouth, stifling a gasp. Ryan spoke again. It's almost too easy. She has no idea that she's been paying below market rent to her own father's LLC this whole time. That garage she's so proud of, the building, belongs to you, Dad. She's basically been funding her own humiliation. They all laughed. My own family laughing about how they had manipulated me, how they planned to use me as a prop in their fundraising scheme. Mum's voice again. The beauty of it is that everyone will feel sorry for us. Poor Thomas and Linda Carter trying so hard to save their wayward daughter from a life of poverty and manual labour. The donations will pour in. And when people ask what we'll do with the money, Chloe asked. Rehab program, life coaching, maybe some courses at community college, Dad replied smoothly. We'll be vague enough that no one can actually track where the money goes. And Maya will be too humiliated to ask questions. She really is that stupid, isn't she? Ryan said, and I could hear the smirk in his voice. Still showing up every time you call, still trying to win your approval. It's pathetic. She's useful, Dad corrected. Let's not forget she's been paying us $7,500 a month for a space that's worth maybe $3,000. That's an extra $54,000 a year we've been skimming off her precious little business. I backed away from the door, my whole body shaking. I needed to leave, needed to get out of there before they discovered me listening. But my hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold my car keys. I made it to the front door and was reaching for the handle when a hand grabbed my arm. I spun around, ready to face whoever had caught me, and found myself looking into the concerned eyes of Jack Morrison. Jack and I had grown up together, neighbours, until his family moved when we were teenagers. He had been my best friend back then, the one person who saw me for who I really was. We had lost touch when he went off to MIT, and I stayed local for school. But I knew he had done well for himself, really well. He had sold his first tech startup at 25 and his second at 30. Now at 32, he was one of those Silicon Valley success stories, though you would never know it to look at him. He was wearing jeans and a worn hoodie, looking more like a college student than a multimillionaire. Maya, he said quietly, his grip on my arm gentle but firm. I heard everything. Don't run. Not yet. Jack, what are you even doing here? Your mum invited my parents to the party tomorrow. They couldn't make it but asked me to drop off their gift. I was about to ring the bell when I saw you through the window and heard the voices. He glanced back toward the study. How long has this been going on? Which part? The manipulation, the humiliation, the stealing? I laughed, but it came out broken. Years, Jack, it's been years. He pulled me away from the door and out to the front porch where we could talk without being overheard. The December air was cold, but I barely felt it. I was numb. Listen to me, Jack said, his hands on my shoulders, forcing me to meet his eyes. You can't just run away from this. If you do, they win. They'll spin whatever story they want, take your money, destroy your reputation, and you'll have no recourse. What else can I do? They're my family, Jack. They're criminals, he interrupted. What they're planning is fraud, wire fraud, charity fraud, probably embezzlement. And if what I heard is right, your dad has been overcharging you for rent and lying about loans. That's actionable. I shook my head. I can't take my own family to court. Maybe not, but you can protect yourself. You can take back your power. He pulled out his phone. I've been doing some research into your dad's business since I heard rumours it was struggling. I have some contacts who owe me favours. Give me until tomorrow morning and I'll have enough evidence to stop this thing before it starts. Evidence of what? Everything. Your dad's been embezzling from his own charity foundation for years. Ryan's been settling malpractice suits under the table to keep his licence. Your mum's been using church donations for personal expenses. And that building you're renting, it's not even legally his to rent anymore. He defaulted on the commercial loan 6 months ago, but the bank hasn't foreclosed yet because he's been stringing them along. I stared at him. How do you know all this? Because I bought the debt, he said simply. 3 months ago, when I heard his company was in trouble, I had my investment firm purchase the outstanding loans. I own the note on that building, Maya, which means technically you've been paying rent to me. My head was spinning. Why would you do that? His expression softened. Because you're my friend. Because I've watched from a distance as they've treated you like garbage for years. And because when I ran into your mum at a charity gala last month and asked how you were doing, she literally didn't know you owned a business. She thought you were just some employee at a garage. Your own mother didn't even know the most basic facts about your life. Something inside me cracked open. It wasn't sadness or anger. It was clarity, cold and sharp as a winter morning. I want to go to that party, I heard myself say. Jack raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? I'm not running anymore. If they want to humiliate me in front of all their friends, fine. But they're not going to do it while lying about who I am. And they're definitely not going to profit from it. A slow smile spread across Jack's face. In that case, I think we need to prepare a few surprises of our own. How do you feel about a little light hacking and some very public truth-telling? I feel like it's about damn time. We spent the rest of that night and most of the next day planning. Jack brought over his laptop and showed me everything he had compiled. Bank statements showing my father had taken over $400,000 from the Carter Family Foundation, a charity supposedly supporting local schools and families in need. Medical board complaints against Ryan that had been settled with confidential payouts totaling nearly $200,000. Credit card statements showing my mother had charged over $60,000 in luxury goods to the church discretionary fund she controlled as head of the women's ministry. And the building, my building. The property records showed Dad had purchased it under an LLC 8 years ago, right around the time I had started looking for commercial space. He had offered to help me find something affordable and had personally negotiated my lease with what I thought was the building owner. I had been so grateful for his support, so hopeful that maybe he was finally taking an interest in my business. The whole time I had been paying him rent at triple the market rate money that went straight into his pocket. Jack also had the real story about the student loans. There was no outstanding debt. He had verified it with every database he could access. Dad had been lying, using my fear of losing my business to keep me compliant. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I had ever felt. It was clean and cold and absolutely certain. The next evening, Christmas Eve, I drove to the Hilton Plano Grand Ballroom, where the party was being held. Dad had spared no expense, or rather had gone into debt for one last spectacular show. The room was decorated like a winter wonderland, all white and silver and crystal. There must have been 300 people there, all of Plano's social elite. I recognised the mayor, several city council members, prominent pastors from the biggest churches, wealthy business owners, and social media influencers that Chloe had courted. I was wearing the dress Mum had sent to my apartment that morning. It was outdated, at least 10 years old, with an unflattering cut and a stain on the hem that had been poorly hidden. Next to Chloe's designer gown and Mom's elegant cocktail dress, I looked exactly like what they wanted me to look, pathetic, downtrodden, in need of saving. Perfect. I found Jack near the bar, looking completely out of place in his casual clothes among the tuxedos and evening gowns. He had his laptop in a messenger bag and gave me a subtle nod. Everything was ready. The dinner portion of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and awkward conversations. I was seated at a table in the back, far from the family table at the front. Every time someone asked what I did for a living, the person next to me would jump in with some variation of, "Oh, Maya's been going through a rough patch," or "She's working on figuring things out." I noticed our neighbour, Mrs. Vander Woodson, at the next table. She and my mother had been in a cold war for years, each trying to outdo the other in demonstrations of wealth and social status. I saw her eyeing the decorations, the guest list, clearly calculating how much this was all costing and whether she could top it. Around 9 o'clock the lights dimmed and my father took the stage. The room fell silent as he tapped the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. The holidays are a time for family, for gratitude, and for coming together to support those we love." He paused, his expression growing sombre. "Which is why Linda and I wanted to gather you all here tonight. We need to talk about something very difficult, very personal. We need to talk about our daughter." A spotlight swung around and landed directly on me. I squinted against the glare, my heart pounding, but I kept my expression neutral. Mum joined Dad on stage, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "Maya is our eldest child," she began, her voice trembling, "and we love her so much. But sometimes love means having tough conversations." The lights went out completely and the massive screen behind them lit up. And there I was on a screen 3 stories tall, lying under a car, my face smudged with grease, wearing coveralls and safety goggles. The photo was from my garage, clearly taken without my knowledge. The caption appeared below, "Maya Carter, a cautionary tale of wasted potential." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Our Maya had everything. Dad continued, his voice heavy with manufactured disappointment. A scholarship to Harvard, a bright future, a family who supported her dreams, but she threw it all away. The slideshow continued, pictures of me at work at my apartment, unflattering candid shots that made me look tired and struggling. Each one had a caption: "Refusing help," "Choosing pride over family," "Lost and alone." Chloe took over the microphone next, her influencer persona in full effect. "Hey everyone, for those who don't know me, I'm Maya's little sister. And I want to tell you all how hard this has been for our family." She pulled out her phone, clearly live streaming. "My sister had so much potential, and now she spends her days covered in motor oil, barely making ends meet. It breaks my heart. But tonight we're asking for your help." Ryan stepped up, ever the respectable doctor. "We've researched several excellent programs that could help Maya get back on track. Vocational rehabilitation therapy, education support. But these programs are expensive. That's why we're asking you, our community, to contribute to the Maya Carter Second Chance Fund." Dad took over again. "Every dollar you donate tonight will go directly toward giving our daughter the help she needs. We've set up a donation page that's linked to Chloe's live stream, and we have donation boxes throughout the room. Please help us save our girl." The lights came back on, but the screen behind them continued to cycle through humiliating photos. I felt every eye in the room on me, heard the whispers, saw the pity and the judgment. Mrs. Vander Woodson was staring at my mother with barely concealed glee, clearly delighted to see the Carter's perfect facade cracking. Then my father did something I wasn't expecting. He walked down from the stage directly toward me, carrying a large donation jar. "Maya," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I know you're proud, but sometimes we need to accept help. Why don't you take this around to the tables? Let people contribute. It might teach you something about humility." He shoved the jar into my hands. It was already half full of cash and checks. He was making me beg. In front of 300 people, he was making me walk around like a charity case and collect money for a fund that was really just a slush account for his failing business. Something snapped inside me. I looked down at the jar. Then I looked at my father. Then I looked at the entire room full of people watching this spectacle, some with pity, some with contempt, some with that sick curiosity people have when watching someone else's humiliation. And I smiled. I turned the jar upside down. Coins and bills scattered across the marble floor, bouncing and rolling in every direction. The room went completely silent. "No," I said clearly. The microphone picked it up and broadcast my voice through the entire ballroom. "I don't think I will." My father's face went red. "Maya, what do you think you're—" He reached for me, his hand raised, and for a second I thought he was actually going to hit me in front of everyone. But before he could, Jack appeared beside me, catching Dad's wrist. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Mr. Carter," Jack said calmly. "Assault in front of 300 witnesses seems unwise." Dad jerked his hand back. "Who the hell are you?" "Jack Morrison, old friend of Myers. Also the person who now owns the commercial note on 22847 Knox Avenue. You know the building where Myers' garage is located? The one you've been illegally subletting to her while pocketing the difference. The one the bank should have foreclosed on 6 months ago." You could have heard a pin drop. I walked up to the stage and held out my hand to Ryan. "Microphone, now." He was so shocked he handed it over without argument. I stood there under the lights looking out at all those faces, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel small, I felt powerful. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began. "I appreciate my family bringing everyone together like this. It really is a special occasion. But I think there's been a misunderstanding. See, I don't need saving, but I think maybe they do." I gestured to Jack, who had made his way to the AV booth. The screen behind me went black for a second, then lit up again, but this time it wasn't showing pictures of me. It was showing bank statements, highlighted transfers from the Carter Family Foundation to Thomas Carter's personal account, $400,000 over 3 years. "That's interesting, isn't it?" I said conversationally. "A charity that's supposed to help struggling families, but the money seems to keep ending up in my father's pocket. I wonder if the IRS knows about this." Dad lurched toward the stage. "Turn that off right now." "Oh, we're just getting started." Another slide appeared. Medical board complaints against Ryan Carter, MD. Botched surgeries. Settlements paid in secret. Patient testimonies describing disfigurement, pain and malpractice. Ryan's face had gone white. "Those are confidential, you can't—" "Public record, actually, just buried under a lot of NDAs and payoffs. But everything comes out eventually, doesn't it?" I turned to my mother. "Mum, I love your handbag. Is that the new Hermes the Birkin? Those run about 40,000, don't they? That's funny because this credit card statement shows you charged it to the Christ Community Church Women's Ministry Discretionary Fund, along with these other purchases: jewellery, spa treatments, first-class flights to Paris." Mum made a strangled sound. In the audience, Pastor William stood up, his face furious. "And Chloe," I continued, looking at my sister, who was still holding her phone, though her live stream had devolved into chaos with thousands of comments flying across the screen. "I hope you're getting all this on video. Your followers deserve to know that the perfect Carter family is built on fraud, theft and lies." The final slide appeared. It was a property deed. "This is 22847 Knox Avenue, my garage. The building I've been renting for 5 years. Except I wasn't renting from some random landlord like Dad told me. I was renting from him. Or I was until he defaulted on the loan and lost it. So technically for the last 3 months I've been paying rent to Jack here." I gestured to Jack, who waved. "But here's the really fun part," I continued, and I was surprised by how steady my voice was. 3 days ago Jack sold me that building for $1. So as of right now, I'm not your tenant, Dad. I'm your landlord. And you know what? Your furniture company, the one you've been running into the ground for the past 2 years, it's in my building too. Different unit, but same property. And according to these records, you haven't paid rent in 6 months. I paused, letting that sink in. "So here's what's going to happen. With my authority as the property owner, I'm terminating the lease on Carter Furniture, effective immediately for non-payment. You have 24 hours to remove your inventory before I change the locks. As for the rest of you," I looked out at the stunned crowd, "if you donated to the Maya Carter Second Chance Fund tonight, I strongly suggest you dispute those charges, because that money isn't going to help anyone but my father's creditors." The room erupted. People were shouting, phones were out recording everything. Pastor Williams was storming toward my parents demanding answers about the church funds. Mrs. Vander Woodson was openly laughing, already pulling out her phone to spread the gossip. My mother let out a dramatic wail and collapsed. For a second I almost believed it was real. Then I saw her peek through her fingers to see if anyone was coming to help her, and I knew it was just another performance. "One more thing," I said into the microphone. "Mum, Dad, Ryan, Chloe, I'm done. I'm done being your punching bag. I'm done being your backup plan. I'm done letting you treat me like I'm worthless because I chose a different path than the one you wanted for me. As of tonight, consider our relationship severed. Don't call me, don't text me, don't show up at my garage. You wanted to know what became of your disappointing daughter. She became someone who doesn't need your approval anymore." I set the microphone down on the stage with a sharp crack of feedback. Then I walked off that stage through the crowd that parted like the Red Sea and out into the cold December night. Jack caught up with me in the parking lot. I was shaking, adrenaline coursing through my system, and I couldn't tell if I wanted to laugh or cry. That was, Jack searched for words, absolutely spectacular. I just destroyed my entire family in front of everyone they know. No, you exposed them. There's a difference. They destroyed themselves, Maya. You just stopped covering for them. He pulled out his car keys. Come on, let's get out of here before the police show up. Police? Oh yeah, Pastor Williams looked ready to press charges for embezzlement. And I may have tipped off a few investigative journalists who were in the audience. This is going to be a very interesting news cycle. We drove around for a while, neither of us ready to go home. Eventually, we ended up at a 24-hour diner, sitting in a booth in the back, drinking terrible coffee and not really talking. I kept checking my phone. Chloe's live stream had gone viral. The hashtag Carter Family Fraud was trending. My phone was full of messages, but I had already blocked my family's numbers. How are you feeling? Jack asked finally. Honestly, I have no idea. Relieved, terrified, guilty, powerful, all of it at once. That's normal. You just broke free from a lifetime of manipulation. It's not going to feel neat and clean. I looked at him across the table, this person who had come back into my life at exactly the right moment. Why did you really buy that building, Jack? He was quiet for a long time. Remember when we were kids? You were the only person who didn't care that my family didn't have money. Everyone else in that neighbourhood looked down on us because we were the poor family in the rich area. But you never did. You saw me, really saw me. Not my circumstances, not my potential net worth, just me. Of course, you were my best friend. You were mine too. And when I made it big, when I had more money than I knew what to do with, I started looking for ways to help the people who had mattered to me. I found out your dad was in trouble and you were caught in the middle of it, so I made sure I'd have leverage if you ever needed it. I guess I was always hoping you'd need it, that you'd finally be ready to break free. I felt tears starting and blinked them back. Thank you for everything. That's what friends are for, he grinned. Plus it was extremely satisfying to watch your dad's face when I told him I owned his building. I've been waiting years for that. The next week was chaos. The news coverage was relentless. My father's charity fraud made headlines. Ryan was under investigation by the medical board. Mum had to resign from every church committee she was on. Chloe lost sponsorship deals as brands distanced themselves from the scandal. The Carter family name, which they had spent decades building, crumbled in a matter of days. The district attorney opened an investigation. The IRS got involved. The whole thing was a mess. But I wasn't part of it. I had meant what I said. I was done. I threw myself into my work. The garage had always been my refuge, but now it became my focus. With the stress of my family's expectations gone, I found I had more energy, more creativity. I started expanding, hiring more staff, taking on bigger projects. Word got around about what I had done, and surprisingly, business actually increased. People respected someone who stood up for themselves, apparently. Jack became a fixture in my life again. At first, he just stopped by to check on me, make sure I was handling everything okay. Then he started bringing lunch. Then he started staying for dinner. Then one day I realised he had basically moved into my office, setting up a laptop in the corner and working remotely while I worked on cars. Don't you have a company to run? I asked him one afternoon as I was changing the oil on a Tesla Model S. I have people for that. Besides, I like it here. It's peaceful. And the company's better. I tried to ignore the way my heart jumped at that. About 3 weeks after the Christmas party disaster, my father's company officially went bankrupt. The furniture stores were liquidated, the inventory sold off for pennies on the dollar. My parents had to sell the mansion in Willow Bend and move into a modest apartment in a different part of town. Ryan moved his practice to a smaller office and was working on rebuilding his reputation, though it was an uphill battle. Chloe had gone quiet on social media, her follower count having dropped by nearly half. I felt a complicated mix of emotions about it all. Part of me, the part that was still that little girl who wanted her parents' love, felt guilty. But the stronger part, the part that had spent years being diminished and used, felt free. They tried to contact me, of course. Letters sent to my garage that I returned unopened. Emails I filtered directly to trash. A few times one of them showed up in person, but I had instructed my staff not to let them in. Finally, about a month after everything exploded, my mother managed to get past my defences. I was working late alone in the garage when she appeared in the doorway. She looked smaller, somehow older. The expensive clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by something more ordinary. "Maya," she said, and her voice was different too, no longer commanding, just tired. "Please, I just want to talk." I should have told her to leave, but curiosity got the better of me. 5 minutes, I said, not putting down my wrench. She walked in slowly, looking around at the garage like she was seeing it for the first time. "I never actually came here before. To your business." "I know. It's impressive, what you've built." "I know." She flinched at my tone. "Maya, I came to apologise. What we did, what we planned to do at that party, it was wrong. I know that now." "Do you, or are you just sorry you got caught?" "Both," she admitted, and the honesty surprised me. "I know you probably won't believe me, but I do love you. You're my daughter." Funny way of showing it. I know. She sank down onto a bench, suddenly looking exhausted. I was so wrapped up in appearances, in what people thought, in maintaining our position. Your father and I, we built our entire lives around being respected, being admired. And somewhere along the way we forgot what actually mattered. I put down the wrench and looked at her. Really looked at her. She was crying quietly, not the dramatic performance from the party, but real tears. "You made me feel worthless," I said quietly. "My whole life you made me feel like I was never good enough, like I was the family failure. And then I found out you were literally profiting off that narrative. You were using my pain to make money. I know, there's no excuse for it. I was wrong. We were all wrong." "Why?" I asked, and I hated that my voice cracked. Why wasn't I good enough? What was so terrible about me wanting to work with my hands, to build something of my own? Mum was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because you were brave enough to do what I never could, to walk away from expectations and make your own path. And I resented you for it. I was jealous of your freedom, your authenticity, so I tried to punish you for it. I hadn't expected that. Mum, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what we did to you, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." We stood there in the silence of the garage, years of hurt and resentment hanging in the air between us. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said finally. "Not yet, maybe not ever, but I hear you, and I appreciate you saying it." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "That's more than I deserve." She stood to leave, then paused. "You know your father won't admit it, but he drives past here sometimes, just to see the place. I think, in his own messed up way, he might actually be proud of you. Too little too late." "I know." She walked toward the door, then turned back one more time. "For what it's worth, I really do love you, Maya. I'm sorry I was too broken to show it right." After she left, I sat there for a long time trying to process what had just happened. I called Jack. "Mum came by," I told him. "How was it?" "Complicated," she apologised. "I think she might have even meant it." "Are you going to forgive her?" "I don't know. Does it make me a terrible person that I'm not sure I want to?" "It makes you human," Jack said. "You get to decide what forgiveness looks like for you, if it happens at all. There's no timeline on healing from what they put you through." "When did you get so wise?" "I've been in therapy for years. Turns out being the poor kid in a rich neighbourhood and then becoming a millionaire before 30 comes with its own issues. Who knew?" I laughed, feeling some of the tension ease. "Want to come over? I'm almost done here." "Already on my way." The months that followed were a process of rebuilding. Not my business that was thriving, but myself. I started therapy, working through years of manipulation and emotional abuse. I joined a support group for people dealing with family estrangement. I learned to set boundaries and stick to them. My relationship with my family remained severed. They kept trying to reach out, especially around holidays, but I wasn't ready. Maybe someday I would be. Maybe not. I was learning that it was okay to protect my peace, even from people who shared my DNA. Jack and I grew closer. What started as an old friendship reignited became something more. He understood me in a way no one else did, saw value in me when my own family couldn't. 6 months after the Christmas party disaster, he took me to dinner at the same diner where we had gone that first night. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. My heart started racing. "Jack, before you panic, it's not what you think. I mean, it could be eventually if you wanted, but that's not what this is right now. He opened the box. Inside was a wrench, a small, perfectly crafted wrench made from polished gold. It's a necklace, he explained. I had it custom made because you're the person who fixes things, who builds things, who makes things work, and I think that's beautiful. I felt tears threatening. Jack Morrison, did you just get me a gold wrench necklace? I did. Is it too weird? It might be too weird. I can return it. I kissed him, right there in the booth of that terrible diner with the burnt coffee and the flickering lights, and it felt like coming home. I love it, I said. I love you. Yeah, his smile was bright enough to light up the whole restaurant. That's convenient because I love you too. Have for years, honestly. I was just waiting for you to be free enough to see it. So there I was, 6 months after the worst and best night of my life. I had lost my family, but I had gained myself. I had built a thriving business, surrounded myself with people who valued me, and fallen in love with someone who saw me for exactly who I was. On New Year's Eve, I threw a party at the garage. Not a fancy affair like my parents would have organised, but something real. My employees' friends, Jack and his family, even some of my regular customers. We ate pizza and drank champagne, and at midnight we all stood outside watching fireworks light up the Plano sky. Jack pulled me aside as everyone was counting down. Happy New Year, Maya! Happy New Year, I replied. Any resolutions? I thought about it. Keep building, keep growing, keep choosing myself. I think that's perfect. He kissed me as the clock struck 12 and cheers erupted around us. I had started the year as my family's scapegoat, their charity case, their disappointment. I was ending it as the owner of a successful business, the landlord of property they had tried to use against me, and most importantly as someone who finally understood her own worth. Looking back, that Christmas Eve party was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because of the public humiliation or the family drama, but because it forced me to finally stand up and say enough. To recognise that I deserve better than crumbs of affection from people who saw me as a means to an end. I learnt that family isn't just about blood, it's about respect, support and love. Real love, not the conditional kind that comes with strings attached. And sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you were born into. As I stood there in my garage on New Year's Eve, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, I realised something important. I wasn't the family failure. I never had been. I was just the first one brave enough to be myself, even when it meant walking away from everything I had been taught to want. And that wasn't failure, that was freedom. Your family should be your safe place, the people who lift you up and celebrate your victories. But what do you do when they're the ones tearing you down? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect? Drop a comment and let me know your story. And if this resonated with you, if you've ever felt like you weren't good enough for your own family, hit that like button and subscribe. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who don't value you, even if they're family, especially if they're family.